All right, welcome back to Old Plastic. Today I'm going to be discussing factory codes. As a variant collector, you all know that I collect Luke Skywalker. And for a relatively plain figure, with no soft good, no plastic cape, he's a pretty straight up figure. Uh, Trying to find variants of him other than the hair can be difficult compared to some of the other figures. Obviously, there's not a lot to him. Um, I've done a lot of research. I've posted a video that I've collected 17 of the known 19 different copyrights on the back of the leg for this figure. Um, Doing research for those different copyrights, one thing I have discovered is um, there's a lot of hate for people like myself that collect variants to this level. Um, and I find that very odd. On all the big forums, like Imperial Gunnery and um, some of the other large ones, they don't like collectors to get nitpicky about minute differences in the copyright for some reason. I'm not sure why this bothers other people how I collect. Um, but obviously, I haven't let it deter me in one bit. I've discovered that there's 19 different copyrights for this particular figure, and I'm lucky enough to own 17 of them. And through my research, I've discovered a way that I've been able to explain what particular factory a copyright has come from. Now, to my disbelief, nobody's ever discussed this before. I've only ever found one other YouTuber besides myself to call it out. And sorry, I was just grabbing a cup of coffee. The other YouTuber, the only one that I've noticed that's actually called it out is Yorkie Bespin. And he came up with a way to figure out what factory went with what copyright on his Luke Bespin figure. And I had been working on it for quite a while before then, trying to figure it out for myself on the Luke Farm Boy. And in all of my research, he is the only other person that talked about it. And it's strange to me because it wasn't very hard to figure out. So I'm not sure why it isn't more well established in the collector universe. Obviously, there's been people collecting Star Wars since they were first released, and you find that a lot on some of these major forums. They all say, "Yeah, I've been collecting Star Wars figures for 30 years, or going on 40 years," and if it would have been a fact, it would have came out by now. I get a lot of that when I'm researching and talking to people in forums. If it hasn't been established, it's not a fact. And a lot of hate comments, that since I've only been collecting for the last 5 years now, I don't have a voice or whatever to state my opinion on it. And it's very bizarre that you'd get that kind of commentary, that somebody would criticize the way you collect or the way you're looking at it. And that's why I've kind of been delaying this video, because I know it'll probably get some dislikes. But with that being said, I'm not going to change the way I collect or the way I look at it. I think all of this should have been common knowledge for the last 20-30 years, and why it's not, I don't know. Unless there's something that I'm missing, until I'm proven wrong on this, this is the way I'm going to look at it. And what I'm talking about is the three big factories in Hong Kong. There's Cater and Unitoy and Smile. Those are the big three out of Hong Kong. And there are a whole bunch of other factories too. I don't really plan on talking about them. Maybe I'll do another video. I'll just read through what they are. Well, from Hong Kong, you know, we have Unitoy, Cater, Smile. Then out of Taiwan, we have Taiwan, that plant as well. And then we have China, and we have Jeddah, toy manufacturing in Hong Kong. You have Macau, which is just across the harbor from Hong Kong. Qualidux, they're out in Hong Kong, but they have plants in Macau. You got Palatoy in England, you got Top Toys Argentina, Toll Toys Australia, POC, which was Spain, and then PVP, which is Spain, Meccano, which is France, Little Letty, which is Mexico, Kenner Canada of Canada, Tri Logo, which was bought out by KB Toys. You got Clipper from Benelux, Glasslight Brazil, Parker, which is Germany, Halbert, which is Italy, Terracotta Japan, or Terracara, Poppy Japan, and Tusca, Tuscadua Japan, and then Brio Playmix of Scandinavia. Those are the major players or factories, resellers and factories of the Star Wars figures. But today I'm talking about Cater, Unitoy, and Smile, the big three out of Hong Kong. And in front of you I have an example of each of the big three. And if we look here, this Luke Skywalker is a 3-line copyright, and this is a Cater figure. It was produced at the Cater plant. Now that's according to me, not according to any particular fact, or it's not written knowledge anywhere, and that's bizarre to me because it wasn't hard for me to figure out that that was a Cater figure. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. I'll show you the other figures. This figure is a 2-line small copyright, which is made by Smile in Hong Kong. This is a Smile figure. And lastly, we have the 2-line large copyright. Now this figure is a Unitoy out of Hong Kong. So the way that I figured out, okay, when I first started collecting Luke Farm Boy, I noticed these three. These are the three like source copyrights that you'll find on a Luke Farm Boy. The 3-line, and there's variants of the 3-line, and I'll get to that. The Unitoy, which is the big copyright 2-line, and the Smile, which is the small copyright 2-line. And there's variants of all three of these. So I knew that it wasn't an accident that there are these 3 main copyrights, and that there's 3 major factories in Hong Kong producing these figures. Now, they're all producing figures for Kenner. One way I look at this is there was close to 1 billion figures produced from 77 to 85. They had Kenner had subcontracted 3 competitors in Hong Kong, Cater, Unitoy, and Smile, to produce these figures. Kenner has a reputation of very good quality control, and you can see that obviously if they produced close to 1 billion figures, right? And look at how many figures that are error figures. It's extremely minute. I mean, look at the new figures produced, being stuck on cards upside down, wrong figure on cards. It happens every day now with the new Star Wars figures. It's quite common, but back in the day, it wasn't very common. And with the Kenner's quality control, these 3 competing factories in China, obviously any major manufacturer wants to mark whatever they're producing, right? They want to be able to identify that it was produced at their factory. That's just common sense, and I don't know why there's any resistance to that. Now, I've heard a lot of things about, well, they have to have a bunch of different molds for when they're doing cleaning. Because in injection mold cleaning, you have to change out molds. I don't know how often they had to do it in plastic mold injection. If it was done at the end of every 12-hour shift or at the end of the week, I'm not sure. But the way I look at it is on this figure, right? This is a 3-line Cater figure, and notice that the date stamp is in the center. There's 2 of these 3-line variants. There's the offset date stamp and the centered date stamp. Now, there isn't 4 different types of this. There isn't 5 different types. There's 2 types. There's centered and there's offset. Now, you won't find any other variations to this. There's one or the other. So, is it difficult for some people to believe that they had, 50 or 100 of these centered molds, and then at the end of the shift they'd swap them out for the offset so they knew what shift it would go to, or at the end of the week so they know which run it went with. So they'd swap out this mold for the one that is offset when they were doing the cleaning. So it's not a coincidence that there's specifically 2 different 3-line, and the coincidence doesn't end there. There's 2 different versions of the small copyright. This one here happens to be the spread 2-line copyright, and there is also a close 2-line copyright. That's not a coincidence. There isn't 3 different versions of this. There isn't 4 different versions. There's 2 versions of this copyright. That's it. That's not a coincidence. Now, on the 2-line large copyright, again, there is 2 versions of this. There's a smooth and a rough. That's not a coincidence. There isn't 4, 5, 6 different versions of this copyright. There's only 2. So, you have 2 sets of molds for each of these 3 copyrights. I'm assuming that it was either a shift change or a run change at the end of a week. I'm not sure injection molding. I don't have a lot of experience with that, how often that needs to be done. Obviously, it was done often because they have very, very few errors for the amount of figures that they were producing. So, my contention here is with the Cater, Unitoy, and Smile here in the middle, they had two sets of molds. They have two different versions of their own copyright. Now, once I'd figured that out in my head, to me it popped up right away. I could see it when I started collecting. You know, I have over 80 of these figures now in my collection, and it's easy to see when you start going through them, spotting these differences. And so once I had figured out, okay, there's three main copyrights. They each have two versions of that, and everybody's talking, well, the same factory could be producing the 3-line and the 2-line because they have to swap out the molds for cleaning. Well, to me, that's not the case. When they swap out the molds, they put in their alternative mold. Okay. So I'm kind of on a rant here because that was kind of chapping my hides in some of the forums. I got into some arguments about it. And then I started doing some more research on the companies themselves. And let's see, when I was trying to figure out, okay, I had established there's three different copyrights and there's two versions of them. So then I was trying to pinpoint what factory that particular copyright would have come from. Well, I found a little tidbit on the Variant Villain on their website that stated that the raised bar China figures were made by Cater. Okay. Variant Villain had posted that they had decided that the raised bar China was produced by Cater because on some card backs, mainly the 65A card back marked as HG, had a Made in Hong Kong sticker covering the printed Made in China on the card back. And Cater has a Chinese factory in on the border town of the town's called Shiku. It's on the border between Hong Kong and China, but it is mainland China. Now, so Cater, being the 3-line, would have been making in their Chinese factory the raised bar. Obviously, it's the same copyright. It's just been altered. Now, again, there is only two versions of the China raised bar. Now, there's the centered and the offset. That is not a coincidence. Okay? They needed two sets of this mold for doing their cleaning and changeover. And it's exactly the same copyright as the one on your right here, the Cater. It's the same copyright. It's just been manipulated to cover up Hong Kong. But it's the same company. But Cater had a factory in China, and they were producing these using their copyright and two versions of it. All right, so I had figured out that the 3-line was Cater, and I got that from the Variant Villain's website. Okay, and then on Smile, I had found on another website, it was the Star Wars archive. They had actual photographs of sample toys. And one of these sample labels said that Smile was packaging toys for Palatoy. Okay. So then I went and looked at a Palatoy version of Luke Skywalker. Well, this is obviously a Palatoy version of Luke Skywalker. And you guys all know that this is the no COO smooth. Now this is, if you look there, this is a Smile copyright that's been manipulated. This is a small copyright 2-line that's been manipulated for Palatoy. So obviously, with from the Star Wars archive, Smile from Hong Kong was helping Palatoy. They were producing figures for them until they got their own molds and started to make them. And when they started to make them, they used the Smile molds, but they manipulate them to remove the Hong Kong. And it's not a coincidence that there's 2 versions of this copyright as well. So there's 2 versions for the Palatoy. The same as the Smile Hong Kong, there's 2 versions of that as well. So I was able to figure out that Cater was the 3-line, Smile was the small copyright. Now, on the, let's see, another way that I was able to pinpoint that the large copyright 2-line was in fact Unitoy, was that I just so happened to have one mint on card. And anybody that has a mint on card figure, no, let me rephrase that. If you have a mint on card figure that doesn't have a lot of accessories, a plain figure like Luke Skywalker Farm Boy, you know, he can't have a skirt on or a robe on. You're never going to be able to see what the copyright is on the figure. On Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi cards, the manufacturers, Cater, Unitoy, and Smile, were marking their cards that that's where the figure was produced. Correct? We all know about these. It's not a secret that this figure is marked as a Unitoy figure right there, right? So this figure was produced by Unitoy. Now, all you have to do is tip this at an angle, break out a flashlight, and since he doesn't have a robe, now I don't know if I'm going to be able to get it on the camera, but I can see on that far leg, it is a large copyright 2-line COO. Now, I'm probably not going to be able to get you to see this on the camera, but I can see it. Just by laying the figure on the bubble and shining a light in there, I can see that this large copyright 2-line COO is a Unitoy. It's not a secret. It's easy. Anybody can see that. Now, unfortunately, this Luke is the only one that I have carded so far, but I'll be getting more. And anybody else that has a Luke that's carded could see that for themselves as well. Now, the other thing I was going to talk about Smile with Palatoy is I have a Palatoy card back. Now, this is a Clat 2. But you can see right there that it says HN. HN is for Smile, the Smile factory in Hong Kong. And you can see that this is a Palatoy card. All right. So that was just another way, I mean, that Smile was working with Palatoy. Hence, the Smile copyright on the Palatoy Luke. Now, whether you agree with anything that I've said in this video, oops, sorry, camera got bumped a little bit there. I think this is pretty rock solid evidence that when I say this 3-line is a Cater, to me it's a Cater figure produced there. And if you have any carded examples that actually have the factory code on it, and you find a factory code card that says Smile, and it has and the figure actually has a big copyright, leave a comment, because it should only have a small copyright if it's a Smile code. That would ruin my theory here as to what factory goes to what figure. If you can disprove it, leave a comment. I have it's weird that there isn't any actual Kenner documentation to this fact. There almost had to be, because they were there was sample figures going back and forth from all these factories that Kenner was working with. And there's photos of only like 3 of them that I found on the Star Wars archive. And they didn't happen to be Luke Farm Boys. So it was difficult. But it's strange to me that this hasn't been common knowledge in the collecting world. And I had to research this for myself to have it make sense in my head. But I think I've figured it out, and I'm more than 80% confident that I have this correct. And if you have any information that might throw a wrench into what I think I've figured out here, let me know. But more people that start looking at their Luke Farm Boys on card back and looking at the copyright, it'll only strengthen this theory that I have going. And until I can be disproven, this is the way I'm going to be looking at my Lukes in future videos. I hope this was informative, or if anything else, giving you something to think about. Now, I've figured this out on my Farm Boys. Yorkie Bespin has figured it out on his Luke Bespin figures. Now, in different figures, it's different because the copyrights aren't all the same big 3 in a lot of the figures. Because of the way the figures are molded, you're not able to use the exact same stamp. Now, with the Bespin Luke, it is very similar to these Lukes. Now, instead of being a 3-line for Cater, I believe it is a 5-line on the Bespin Lukes. And that changes throughout all the different figures. But this is what I've figured out for the Farm Boy. And I believe that this theory more than holds water, and it is definitely the way I'm going to be looking at my Lukes in the future. And as I start to collect or start to build on my other collections or runs or focuses, like my Han Solo. My Han Solo is similar, but it's going to be even more difficult to figure out because the COOs seem to be very similar. Because he has narrower legs than the Luke, and that's going to be a harder one to figure out. But yeah, please let me know what you guys think. If you made it through, this turned out to be a long video, and I apologize for that. I could have made it a lot longer. I have a huge document folder down on my computer where I found all this information, and it kind of breaks it up, but it would double the length of this video. So anyways, I hope you guys all had a wonderful New Year's Eve, and I hope that 21 is better for all of us. Thank you.